Dungeons and Dragons encounters should be filled with epic combat and winning by the skin of your teeth. Well, sure, that's one way to view combat. That's one way to view encounters. But what I really want to talk about is what encounters really are. So, if you're a new dungeon master and you're trying to figure out how to build encounters and how to balance encounters, this is for you. If you're a veteran dungeon master, you may want to stick around because a lot of people think of encounter design and they think of something like this, right? Well, where are we going to place the monsters? What are the CR? What are the ratings? And that is part of encounter design. But what encounter design really is, if you can read it, is great stories. It's something to move the plot along. It's something to give the player something to remember. It's an encounter that can be social. It can be combat. It can have a purpose. It could be just something to utilize resources to make the final boss feel bigger. Every encounter has something that's going to add to the story. What an encounter is not is a perfectly balanced thing where the players may or may not be winnable. It's not just something that's thrown down because the world has decided it's going to be there. An encounter is not just something you put in front of the players to occupy time. An encounter has a purpose. It's a central pillar of Dungeons and Dragons, of most TTRPGs. And so what you do with those encounters and how you build them will reflect the game that you're running at your table. And we have to understand what that actually means. An encounter has a purpose. What is the purpose of this encounter? And it could be something as simple as to flesh out the world, to give the players a chance to see how dangerous it is, to let the players see how this city works, to see how this Thief Guild really functions. It may not be a winnable encounter. It can show them that the encounters don't have to end in death. It can be to teach the players a mechanic in the game. It could be, do you get the drift yet? An encounter can serve 1,000 different purposes, but that's the point. The point is that every encounter should serve a purpose of some kind. And as a dungeon master, we have to look at how that party is made up. We have to look at the stats of that party because there's something that we don't want to have happen. When we build an encounter, most new dungeon masters are terrified of TPKing the party. As we get older, we realize that, as I say, once we get older, once we become more experienced as a dungeon master, something else happens. We start worrying about the fact of, are my players just walking through this encounter? We're not so much worried about TPKing because we know how to back off of an encounter when that happens. And so balancing an encounter is not just about what you put on the board. Balancing encounter has to do with what is being shown through this encounter. What happens when the players lose this encounter? Is it life or death? Do we need to hold back a little bit? Balancing the encounter is about knowing what the party is capable of, what your players are capable of. If I put 4 players at a table and they're veterans, they will function differently than if I put 4 new players at my table. And so, yes, we can do the math. We can use our math rocks and our calculations to put a balanced encounter on the table. But when we play with inexperienced players, that may not be balanced for them. There's also metagaming to consume. If I put a troll on the field and I'm playing a bunch of grognards like myself, we know to use fire. We know that'll stop the regeneration. We'll try not to use it. And then when we start losing, someone's like, I take a torch and I hit it with it. We get it. We understand. But the table of my daughter and her friends have no idea that a troll is vulnerable to fire. Even when I, as a dungeon master, throw a new monster on the table and I have a veterans of players, they don't know what to do. They will make suboptimal choices. And maybe that's the balance as well. When I have really good role players that are role playing their characters, I can put more natural encounters on the field because I know that they will make mistakes intentionally in order to play in character. So encounter design is not just about balancing encounters. Now, are we going to cover that? Absolutely. In later episodes, we will cover how to balance encounters, how to look at things on a board and say, what can I throw at my players that won't kill them? But the one thing we have to agree on is what is an encounter. And for the purposes of this lesson, and for you as a dungeon master, an encounter is something you are placing in front of your players that serves a purpose. Remember, that purpose doesn't have to be just combat. It doesn't have to be a resource sink. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It could be to teach a mechanic because you have new players. It could be to move the story forward because it's pivotal to the story. It could be to show the players how dangerous the world is. It could be the player to show the players a new monster, to introduce something, to telegraph something the players are going to see in the future. All of those things are things that you, as a dungeon master, can tell your players through an encounter. An encounter doesn't just need to be combat. It can be to show the players that, in fact, death is not the way that you want to go most of the time, especially in a city. And it doesn't even have to be them fighting. Maybe someone else dies by the hands of an NPC and then the guards show up and haul them off because they killed someone. You can show plot points through an encounter. Dialogue can happen during that encounter to show things. People can run away. A wyvern can attack, but after being hit twice, fly away to show that this is a dangerous place, but wild animals won't stay and fight until the end. There's so much about the world that you're investing in as a dungeon master that you're creating. And if you just diatribe and you just monologue and you just give them a book for them to read, that's not necessarily enjoyable for your players. But if you give them an encounter that shows them a piece of the world, now you're talking. And so that's what an encounters can do. An encounter is your way of engaging your players through combat, through social interactions that has an outcome that maybe even you as the dungeon master haven't decided. An encounter is something that has a purpose in the game. A random encounter even has a purpose. It can be to show the players that it's dangerous out here. But even a random encounter doesn't have to end in combat if that's not the game you're playing. And remember, anyone that tells you an encounter fits a specific mold is actually the one that's in the wrong. I play heavy combat games. I know how to build encounters. I can throw them together. I don't even have to use stat blocks most of the time because of my understanding of how encounter design works. You, as a new or veteran dungeon master, have never even viewed encounters the way that I just described it. Or you may have not have thought of using encounters to show a perspective, to show an idea, to show mechanics, to teach the players new things. So remember, if your encounter serves a purpose and it delivers that purpose, it's a successful encounter. Also, not every encounter has to be memorable. You don't have to go through the entire game with every encounter that you come up with being that one encounter that nobody will ever forget. So keep that in mind. The encounter serves a purpose, whether it's combat, whether it's social, whether it's winnable or unwinnable, and it's all balanced and built around the party at your table. Anyone that tells you you don't have to worry about encounter balance is lying. They think they're not worried about encounter balance, but they are. They say they just put things on the table and let the players deal with it. That's BS, because the range of play is from level 1 to level 20. And if you're playing level 1 characters and I'm just putting things in front of you that would exist in the world and I'm not putting things that are level appropriate, then you're going to die. But if I'm putting things at a level appropriate in front of you, and because you're leveling, you're putting yourself in new situations and put yourself in front of greater mobs, and I'm calling that I'm not balancing the counters, that's still not true. The encounters we put in front of our players are built for them, for the table. Now, the range of which you put those encounters will vary from you to me to the table to the dynamic of the game we're playing. Some people will have a lot more magical items, so they'll lean heavier into the higher CR creatures. Some tables will even have less variety. They'll have lots of low-level creatures where everything seems winnable. Some characters set tables will be heroic. There's a lot of ways that you can play Dungeons and Dragons, and every table is different. And how you balance those encounters is up to you. But to balance a counter properly, to have its purpose fulfilled so it's reaching the desired effect you want as the dungeon master, you have to understand encounter design. And the first thing to understand is, what is the purpose of the encounter? I leave you with that for this first episode. We're going to catch into this. We're going to go into detail in the next ones, but I really wanted to break this up. Today's episode is really about what is the purpose of an encounter, and that's up to you. Anything can be its purpose. So we'll look at counter design next.